The more we practice embracing paradox, the more we can expand the contours of our own consciousness to see reality, see our own nature, and discover our life. When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. Hello and welcome back to Remember Why You're Here, a podcast for seekers and sensitives where you can relax, receive, reconnect to yourself, and remember why you're here. I'm Asia Suler, author, earth intuitive, teacher, and paradoxical person. And this podcast episode today is all about allowing yourself to be the paradox that you are. This episode is here to give you permission to be complex, contradictory, to be a paradox. There's this level of reality in which we are meant to be all of the things that we are, that no part of us is out of place, that every part of us has a role to play. And I truly believe that part of our goal here on this planet, part of why we're here, is to embrace the paradoxes that we are, to embrace our multitudinous nature, and that it's really through embracing our own diversity and complexity that we can bring the diversity and the deep nuance and complexity of our gifts to this world. Embracing your own paradoxical self is an act of service for this world. It brings healing to our planet. And of course, within our own lives, it brings healing to ourselves. So in this episode, we're going to explore what a paradox is, why it's at the heart of basically every major mystical tradition on the planet. We're going to look at this idea of paradoxes as portals and really see the way in which we are all paradoxes. I'm going to tell a story from my life that I always hearken back to illustrate this and really guide you to start seeing and embracing the paradox within yourself. Because the paradoxes that you carry have encoded within them the energy of the gifts and the healing you're meant to bring to this world. So let's get into it. So what is a paradox? A paradox is a contradiction that is nevertheless true. It is something where there's seemingly two opposingly opposite truths or ways of being that coexist at once, and that they're both authentic. They're both true at the same time. A paradox is a way of being in which there are these two qualities or characteristics that seem as if they'd almost negate each other, or that they couldn't coexist at once, and yet it's actually through embracing that they're both real and that they're both true that we grasp and connect to ultimate reality. Paradoxes defy our logic, and yet we can grasp them through our wisdom. Wisdom tells us that paradox is at the heart of reality, and that actually, if we want to grasp the truth of existence, we do this through embracing paradox. Paradox is at the heart of reality here on our planet. It is at the bedrock of this experience of physical reality. It's everywhere you look. It's darkest before the dawn, that decay and death leads to new life, that Earth, as a mother, gives birth and nourishes us and also takes away, that initiates death, initiates transformation. All of these things are true at once here, and it's part of what makes this planet so interesting. Such an interesting place for our souls to come, such a dynamic place to come learn, is that paradox is built into the fabric of our reality. And this is a big reason why the embracing of or the courting of paradox is at the heart of every major mystical tradition that we see on our planet. Paradox, it bridges us beyond our logical mind. It bridges us beyond sort of the duality of thinking, this sort of black and white view of reality, and helps us touch the numinous nature of reality. It brings us closer to the mystery. Mystery is the bedrock of our existence. Everything is made up of mystery. There's more that we don't know by leaps and bounds than we do know. It's like the bulk of a mountain, the bulk of an iceberg is beneath the surface, and that's the nature of reality. That mystery makes up our existence. And so mystical traditions really valued and enshrined the paradox as a tool for helping us connect to the mystery, to connect to the deeper tides of existence, and to understand our existence here on this planet, the way that this planet operates and functions, the beautiful, in some ways, non-dual nature of this planet. That dichotomy exists, but within that dichotomy is always the paradox. Paradox will show you where the deep, meaningful stuff exists. This is why in our true nature, all of us are paradoxes, because this is where the deep and meaningful stuff lives. It's only through paradox that we touch the nature of reality, because reality is such a paradox. We are these eternal beings who come here to live and die, who come here to forget about our eternal nature and have these temporary experiences on this planet. Like, has there ever been a greater paradox, right? That we are both eternal and mortal. So there's this level in which, paradox, it helps our brain to transcend the limits of our thinking. It helps our consciousness to expand. The more we practice embracing paradox, especially embracing paradox within ourselves, the more we can expand the contours of our own consciousness to see reality, see our own nature, and discover our life outside of the bonds or the confines of what we think is possible. I love this quote by Carl Jung, and he says, "The paradox is one of our most valuable spiritual possessions. Only the paradox comes anywhere near to comprehending the fullness of life." Life is so powerfully full of all the feelings, all the experiences. And yet the human mind often tries to put things in certain boxes, and we live in a time right now where that categorization and that delineation, that and or thinking versus the both and thinking is kind of at the center of our culture. And so embracing the paradox that is us, within us, helps us also expand the potential of what we can create in this world, because our consciousness expands as well. And this is really at the heart of why paradox is at the center of so many mystical traditions on our planet. For example, Jesus was considered to be both fully human and fully divine. That's a paradox. Or in, Hindu mysticism, you are both the drop and the ocean. You are both at once. Or in Taoism, the Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. At the heart of so many of these traditions was this awareness that paradox is a portal. It's one of those inbred portals to existence where when we learn how to embrace it, it opens up another way of seeing and being on this planet. I think in a lot of ways we came to Earth to experience the delight of paradox. As souls who are in the spiritual world and not embodied, there's no opportunity for there to be paradox in the same way, because everything exists and is. There's no opposite. There's no contradictory forces. There's no dichotomy. There's no yin and yang. And so I think on a soul level, we're actually really delighted to come here to this planet and let's experience the juiciness of paradox. Let's experience the juiciness of being in a place on a planet at a time where it seems like there's opposites and polarities, and yet somehow this process of separating out into two parts actually brings us back together into more wholeness. And this is a big part of the origin story in Taoism, this idea that, out of the void came something, the one thing, and this one thing, this one energy decides to split itself. literally split itself into the yin and the yang, into these two opposing forces, because the presence, whatever you want to call it, wanted to learn about itself. And it knew that through separating, these two pieces could come back together. And when they came back together, after this experience of polarity, when they came back together, they create more wholeness and more integration than existed before. And this is so much of what we're doing when we embrace the paradoxes that we are. We are moving towards greater integration and wholeness within us. And this is also why I really name this reality that we bring wholeness and healing to the world through embracing our own inner paradoxes, through recognizing that there's going to be parts of us that don't make sense, that seem to be completely opposing, that don't fit the script, that don't fit the paradigm of how we're expected to act, or who we're expected to be, or even who we expected ourselves to be, or who we think we should be. That all of this is such rich, juicy, important terrain, that paradox is a portal, and it's a portal within your own life as well for reaching new levels of integration and self-awareness and possibility. We are all paradoxes, every single one of us. It's really just a matter of how tuned in you are or not to the fact that you're a paradox. But, know this, that our healing, our well-being, the expansion of our consciousness is dependent upon embracing this, that we are complete paradoxes. And within the realm of this earth and this reality, it's irreconcilable. And I'm putting that in air quotes because it's not meant to be reconciled. It's meant to be enjoyed as textures of two energies coming into play with each other. So I have to tell this story from my own life that really helped me see and embrace the paradox within me. I always get a kick out of the story, and hopefully you will enjoy this too. So I was at a gathering, a primitive skills gathering, earth skills gathering. And at this gathering, there's always a mead circle. So people come, they bring their meads, everyone tastes like a million different meads, and everyone gets a little bit tipsy, as I'm sure you can imagine. Well, I came late to this mead circle, and so everyone was already deep, like several hours deep into tasting every different kind of mead you could imagine. And I roll up, and there's two people there that I know and have known for a long time. At that point, I've probably had known them for at least a decade. And I sit down, and they're very jolly, and they're very, talkative and just like open. And we're having this really heart-opening conversation. And it was a man and a woman. And as we're talking, the woman says to me, Asia, when I first met you, I thought you were completely different than you actually are. And I was like, that's interesting. And then the guy says the same thing. He's like, oh my God, I can't believe you just said that, because that was exactly my experience too, that when I first met Asia, I thought she was completely different than how she actually is. And I'm like, okay, tell me more. Like, what do you mean? Like, how did you experience me then versus how you experience me now? And so, the woman who's my friend was like, oh, when I first met you, I thought you were this like vivacious, like sexual, sensual, like party girl, just like this person who threw this lavish parties and was like, embedded in this sort of like erotic atmosphere. And she said, but then, I got to know you, and I'm like, oh, Asia is actually so like deep and spiritual, and like holds this wisdom, and is this channel for, this like sort of like grounded, peaceful spiritual information. And it's like this teacher. And I never saw that. And in her mind, these were two contradictory things. And then the guy was like, I could sort of just see his eyes scan back and forth and his jaw open. And he was like, it was the exact opposite for me. He was like, when I first met Asia, I thought she was this like ethereal kind of like, angelic cottagecore, like innocent Anne of Green Gables, like, come with me to the meadow and I will like show you, like help you speak to the flowers. And he was like, it wasn't until I got to know you that I realized that you have this like really, vivacious side to you, that you have like a raunchy sense of humor, that you're sarcastic, that you have this like sensuality to you. it was just this moment where I saw them like look at each other and realize, oh my God, we had these completely opposite experiences of this person. And I'm just here kind of like laughing, also in awe, also thinking about like how funny it is to have people who know you from the time that you're like, 23 to your mid 30s. But it stuck out to me. And it was one of the first times that I remember being like, I am both. And in whatever ways you think those two sides are paradoxes, like the part of me that was for years like a pole dancer, like as my hobby. I loved pole dancing and I competed in the Atlanta pole competition and won second place in my, category. that was happening at the same time that I launched my, big program, Intuitive Plant Medicine, which was, really the sort of like that more like spiritual in the garden, the flowy dresses and the big hats and the quiet listening and all these things that people, I think of as paradoxes, but it coexist within me, have always been with me, that I've always been both of those things, that I'm both like introverted and I love being at the center of a party. I don't know. It doesn't make sense. That I'm an introvert and I'm in some ways like shy and private, and yet like part of my whole life thing is to put myself out there in the world and to perform and to express myself. And I share this, not to like go on and on about myself, but to illustrate for you that you contain these paradoxes too. And that while you might not have had two people who maybe had a lot of mead openly admit this to you, you have probably had this experience happen to you in your life where people meet you, they see one version of you, they see you inhabiting a certain side of yourself, and they sort of assume, right, that you are a certain way. And yet you contain these incredible multitudes. I also think that we get stuck in these traps too. Like, I can't tell you how many times in my life I felt like, I need to be a certain way, like I need to be this, whatever it is, like straight A, kind of like studious person. And that's at odds, right, with this person who wants to throw it all away and just like be a poet and not go to school that day or whatever it is. That we're constantly at odds with the paradoxes within us. But the whole point is to embrace that they're all meant to be there, that these paradoxes are meant to exist within us because it's like the flake, it's the seed of the divine within us to have these multiple facets of our being that coexist at once. And when you stop resisting the diversity within you, even when it seems like they're in conflict, the part of you that wants something and the part of you that doesn't want something, when we stop resisting that and we're just with it, we open up so much energy. We open up this potential for all the energy that exists within us. If we stop resisting maybe the part of us that, wants to stay home and cozy up and like be in our blankets and read our fantasy book, and also the part of us that like wants to go out dancing and wants to be seen and wants to kiss someone cute. Like, this is just one example, but it's like when we stop resisting that, we actually open up this big energy potential of who we really are, which is this beautiful, complex mix of all these facets of our being, of a spirit, a soul that is beyond this human form, that comes in with like all the depths, all the complexities, and that comes in wanting to play. And we really see this at play in what's called parts work, or the internal family systems therapeutic model, where the whole idea here is it's viewing the mind not as a single entity, but as a series of parts, a system of parts, and each have their own personality and desires and roles and viewpoints and emotions. And sometimes it feels like these parts of us are in conflict, that they're causing conflict for one another, and because they want different things and they're trying to do different things. But in this model of thinking, this therapeutic model of thinking, like healing happens when we realize that all the parts are welcome. That it's not like just some parts are the good parts and other parts are the bad parts. All parts are welcome, and our goal is not to fix them, but to befriend them. That they're all here in part to work with one another. That we are complex, we are multitudinous, and it's like part of the delight of getting to be here in this existence. And embracing this is not only just healing for us, it's also healing for the cultures in which we move, right? Like there's this myth of consistency, especially in Western culture, this myth of consistency that somehow you need to be consistent. Your routines need to be consistent. Your life needs to be consistent. The messaging you put out there in the world needs to be consistent. The way you present yourself. When the reality is nothing in life is consistent. Everything's changing all the time. There's this beautiful quote from the poet Adrienne Rich that I love that goes like this: "The moment of change is the only poem." Oh, and it touches the heart of reality that everything's in motion, everything is always changing, nothing is consistent, and anything that is consistent, that's static, that's death in a certain way, right? Like we want the chi, the life force of life, to keep flowing, to keep changing. That movement is life itself, and so when we allow ourselves to be contradictory, to be complex, to be a paradox that frankly can't be figured out, then we're actually rewriting the cultural paradigm of, what it means to be alive, what's valuable about what we bring, what we're here to experience, what is really at the heart of life. What is a good life? A good life is embracing the paradox of it all, embracing that within grief, there's love, and within love, there's grief, and within death is always life. And life is a process of accepting and dancing with death. All of this is at the heart of our existence. And so, there's this invitation here to when we can embrace paradox, we open our gaze to nuance and complexity. We bridge beyond the black and white thinking that is just really so embedded in our cultural narrative right now. And it's really unhelpful. It's very deeply unhelpful to be thinking in black and white terms in a world that is so complex and so numinous and so full of potential. We need more both and thinking. We need people who are willing to embrace their own paradoxes and complexity so that as a world we can step back into really being in touch with the nature of reality, of this, that both and, that they can coexist, that, there is not one right way and one wrong way, that there is not an us versus them, but that it's all of us as a part of this greater source coming in to have these individual experiences and learn about our wholeness and our oneness through this experience. So yes, I think embracing the paradox of yourself, is this important? Is this vital? Is this rich? It's such rich terrain. And so I really encourage you to ask yourself, what are the sides of you that you deem unwelcome? The parts of you that feel unacceptable. And this might change given the situation that you're in, right? Like when I was in my pole dancing class, it's perfectly acceptable to be vivacious and sensual. But when I'm, sitting down and teaching about a flower essence, there's definitely a time in my life where I felt like that wasn't welcome. That wouldn't have been okay. And so I ask you, in your life, what are the parts of yourself that feel unacceptable, that feel unwelcome, that you feel as if there's no way that they could be embraced in whatever space that you're moving through? And just notice what arises, notice what comes up. It's often the parts of ourselves that we're resisting the most, that we don't want to embody the most, or that we feel like is the most taboo in a situation, that's actually here to liberate us in the biggest way possible. And I really invite you to play with how can you delight in that energy instead? And I'm not necessarily asking you to wear your pole dance shoes to church on Sunday. You can if you want to, but what I am asking you to do is in what ways can you personally, in your own life, in your own existence of your reality, delight in these parts of yourself that you think for some reason are just not welcome in certain situations? Can you create arenas, safe spaces, places in your life where you can enjoy those parts, where they can be let out, where they can be celebrated. To relish the fact that you are like an unsolvable mystery, that you don't know why you like those two things at once. You don't know why you are these two things at once. It's not to be figured out. It's to be experienced. So in what way can you like not only embrace that you are a paradox, and it doesn't make you lesser than, it doesn't make you inconsistent, it doesn't make you confused, it doesn't make you confusing, it makes you human. It makes you a spirit, a soul inside of a human body having this incredible human experience. It makes you real. It makes you connected to the heart of reality. When we feel tension around a certain part of ourselves, and especially a part of ourselves that's unexpressed or repressed, or somehow we feel like we need to put it in a certain place, like that tension is actually energy. It's an indicator of the energy that's here to be used, enjoyed, played with. And that's why when we embrace these parts of ourselves, when we allow them space to delight in life and do their thing, that we free up so much energy. We use an incredible amount of energy anytime we're resisting or repressing something inside of ourselves. And like, bless our hearts, we're human, it's like part of the deal. And we can do this conscious work. We can do this work of really embracing the paradoxes within us and actually kind of delighting in it. And haven't you found this to be true, that the people who you find most interesting in this world are kind of openly paradoxical? That like, you love it, right? If you hear the story about this like very spiritual monk who just like on their off days, of their days when they're like go to town, like their guilty delight, they might go get like fast food. Isn't that delightful? I made this up. I'm sure that exists somewhere. But like, there's something about that that's so delightful, right? Like, we love paradox. Actually, if we sort of drain some of the fear out around paradox of, will I be accepted? Will I be embraced? Is it okay if reality is not so predictable? If we let that go, paradox is so fun and delightful. Isn't it more fun to have both and in existence? Isn't it more fun to have two seemingly contradictory things exist at once? It's like the definition of delight. And so you in yourself are like the definition of delightful when you like simply embrace that you have all these layers, you have all these textures, you have all these colors. You're not a riddle to be solved. You are a monument of existence that's here to be honored. You're a work of art, a creation, an existence that's here to be honored. Like, you are, in this way, you are like a Zen Koan. Zen Koans don't have answers. That's not the point of a Zen Koan. A Zen Koan is asked because through asking, it breaks down the barriers inside your mind. It opens your mind up to new possibilities of seeing, new levels of self-awareness, new perceptions of reality. That's who you are. And when you are willing to embrace the paradox within yourself, you become like a Zen Koan in this world, something that people might encounter and go, this does not make sense to me, but honestly, it's freeing me in ways I can't even express. I think this is why we love hearing about or being around people who really embody their own paradoxes, because it frees us too. It frees our mind, it frees our perspective, and it frees our consciousness back into the wider contours that are possible. So I encourage you to, make a list of your own paradoxes. Like, write them down, make a category, have two different sides. I'm this and this. I'm this and this. I'm introverted and I'm gregarious. I'm thoughtful and I'm spontaneous. I'm spiritual and I'm irreverent. Write these things down and maybe even, write down with these like, when you feel these different sides of yourself come up, when do they have time to play? And make more space for both of those places, especially in the places, in the parts of you that don't get enough playtime, that don't get enough time out in the world. And there's this reality where if we can find the paradox in any situation, we find peace. Because so much of what causes us internal strife is trying to make something be a certain way, trying to figure out, is this good or is this bad? Is this right or is this wrong? And if we just allow it to be a paradox, to be complex, to have layers, to be like, it's both, like this is good for me and this is kind of hard for me. This is something that's bringing a lot of like joy to my life, and it's something that's bringing up these layers of grief or loss or worry or whatever it is. That's okay. It's allowed to be a paradox. You're allowed to have both exist at once inside of something, just like you're allowed to have both exist at once inside of yourself. So if we just embrace that, the biggest, richest things in life will naturally be a paradox. They just will. It's what adds to their beauty. It's what adds to their depth. When we can embrace that, we find freedom. We open up energetic layers of our own self, and we can really embrace our own selves in a way that we have access to all of the energy that we're meant to use here on this planet, to be a part of the dreaming of our planet, to bring ourselves closer into the heart of reality and deliver into the heart of reality the gifts that we're here to offer. If paradox contains this much energy, then you living out your paradox, letting it be, is you allowing life force to exist on this planet. It's allowing yourself to be in alignment with the life force of this planet and letting that energy move through you. And you probably even notice now as you're listening, like this sense, this feeling of like more energy arising within you. There's a relief, right? There's a relief in just being the paradox that you are. And I promise that the more you are, the more you allow yourself to be this paradox, the more you will call into your life the people and situations that really love and honor you as the paradox that you are, that don't want you to be just one thing. That's boring. They don't want that. Like the people and the places and the situations that are meant for you will delight in the paradox that you are. We'll find it to be one of the most invigorating and freeing things. We'll want to be in your presence because you are so willing to embody the paradox. And this is really a force of becoming an evolution for our planet. So as Lao Tzu says in the Tao Te Ching, when I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. And that's what we're doing. We're letting go of what we think we are, what we've been trained to do, all the ways in which we've been programmed to view how we view ourselves, what a good person looks like, like what an acceptable person looks like. And when we do that, we're becoming who we might be. And so there's this energy, there's this force of when we do this for ourselves, what we're bringing to the planet is this energy of letting go of what was to embrace what might be. There are so many potentials and possibilities for what might be on this planet. So many. And I think so often we get stuck in the doomsday loop of the news and the news cycle, the things we're being bombarded with every day, that we don't recognize just how much potential and possibility is still before us. How much can shift and change. The ways in which we let go of what was, we embrace what might still be. We step towards new realities, new possibilities on this planet. And I deeply believe, and have heard over and over again from this earth, that it truly begins with us accepting the earth of our own selves, coming into alignment with the earth of our own beings, with embracing the way reality manifests itself through us, which in this way of thinking is embracing the paradox of who we are, the beautiful, conflicting, confusing, complex, utterly delightful paradoxes that each and every one of us are. The paradox that you are, that you came to embody here on this planet. This is part of your gift. Part of why you're here. And I want you to know that this earth is just absolutely delighting in all it is that you carry and all it is that you are, in the complex, nuanced landscape of who you are in your being. And that you simply coming home to that and resting there is creating these greater ecological systems of transformation and care on this planet. So if you feel moved to share, I'd love to hear about what paradoxes came up for you. And if you'd like to share, leave me a voice message. Head on over to ageofsuler.com/remember and you can leave me a voice note there. And I would love to hear your voice and celebrate you and the paradox that you are. And if you're listening to this when this first came out, it is officially a few days before my birthday, which always feels like such a fun time to embrace paradox on one's birthday. Like, what do I want to do for this day? Maybe I want to do all the things that the different parts of me like to do. But if you are listening in this time frame, then we're running a 20% off sale for my birthday off everything on the website. So if you're interested in a course or my collection of guided meditations, all of that is there and available, and you can get 20% off your entire order between now and the end of my birthday on Friday, July 18th. So if you're interested, go check that out. It would mean a lot to me to get that little birthday gift from you on my birthday. So just use the code birthday20 at checkout and that entire discount will be applied to your whole cart. And if you would like to give me another birthday present, or if you just want to do a good deed, an act of service today, something like leaving flowers on someone's doorstep or a little offering out in the world, then I would love it if you left a rating, review, or stars or thumbs up for this podcast. It really logistically very much helps this podcast to get out there into the world. And each and every one just means so much to me. I will be reading them on my birthday this year. So if you feel moved to do that, if this podcast has been meaningful to you or helpful for you in any way, that would just be such a wonderful birthday gift for me this week. So thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being the paradoxes that you are. I love that we get to hang out as paradoxical people and just enjoy and embrace the levity of it and delight really in this existence of being able to be who we are, these beautifully complex paradoxical beings on this beautifully complex paradoxical planet. It's a joy. And may your embracing of the paradox that you are, this exploration of this beautiful paradox that you contain and that is at the center of your being, may it only bring you closer to this most important thing of all. Remembering why you're here.